Welcome to In Good Company. Expect honest conversations, useful ideas, and stories that you can take into your day. We dig deep into the moments that changed people's lives and careers, the small habits that protect well-being, and the decisions that move teams forward. I'm Patrick, your host, founder of PsyPotential, and a psychologist by training. I love turning psychological insight into simple habits that help people grow. This is a space for thoughtful dialogue, honest reflection, and meaningful conversations. Today I'm joined by two of my colleagues, Joe and Joshua, experts in psychology and professional development. They're here with me to introduce our podcast and share the thinking, the purpose, and the vision behind it. So here we are. This has been long time coming, right? So amazing.
It's surreal for me, to be honest. Yeah, but I mean, it started as a what if we did a podcast,
Yes,
you know? And then, I mean, it was a cool idea. We were excited by it. We're like, no, it's not going to happen. And
We're not
we
Stephen
typically
Bartlett.
do. Yeah, we're not Stephen Bartlett, exactly. And then we spoke to our marketing team at Nisha, and they're like, yeah, you could actually totally do that.
Exactly.
And here we are.
I thought it was just an idea in the beginning, a good to have. But
Yeah.
it's great to be sitting down here and to be doing this.
And yeah, the way I see it is that there are so many podcasts out there. And I think one of our reactions was like, what can we offer which is different? But I think we have a lot to offer which is different. We see so many people, we talk to so many different companies, and
Exactly.
it's a pity.
We're always trying to bring,
Exactly.
we have so many interesting conversations with people all the time. We have insights from coaching and training, and they just stay in the room. So in this case, we thought, we can create something which, allows a wider audience maybe to listen to that and to maybe learn from it as well and apply it in their daily life.
It's actually that, the reach, because in a way, because of technology and how easy it is to tap into this knowledge, I think we can reach more people and spread our influence, our mission. So I think it's a good way to do that.
It's funny because I think we spent a lot of time trying to think about the title. In
Yeah.
particular, we knew what we wanted to talk about, but the title was a running debate amongst the whole team. We kept voting on it. And then we finally stumbled upon In Good Company. So maybe we can, share a bit why.
That was amazing, the way it popped up, because I think we were doing one of our brainstorming sessions.
Yeah.
And I forgot who it was, but someone's actually said, what about In Good Company? And, there are we interpreted it in multiple ways.
Yeah.
I mean, you had a really good twist. You gave it a really good twist.
Because so behind the mission, of PsyPotential for me, especially, it's one of the core principles is this idea, that you're always trying to make people feel better. Of course, we want business to succeed, and we want all of those kinds of things, but it's the people that make the business succeed. It's relationships that make people happy. So it's not, the things that you buy. It's not your wealth. It's not specifically your job. I mean, it could even be, a job which people find typically boring. They find, passion within that, and they find a purpose. So it's really relationships that keep people moving forward. So, our aim here is to just help people to feel in good company in their workplace and to create good companies where people feel safe and they feel like they can speak up. They feel like they can, share what they're thinking and be vulnerable. And I think that's what it's really all about.
I guess that humanizes the workplace as well, and in a sense, because sometimes we go to many different organizations and company where there's a lot of talk about, goals, reaching goals, KPIs, getting there, getting results, making profits, getting sort of bonuses, etc. But at the end of the day, it does boil a lot down to the relationships that are held, and that helps get you through and actually enjoy what you're doing whilst working as well.
Exactly, and it's what keeps people at the company. Yeah. So we actually see most people tend to leave because of the relationships at work and when they're failing or they're having issues. And I think it's good to mention that the kind of key people in that formula are the leaders, because those are the people who are, you're speaking to day in, day out, weekly, and so they impact it the most. So when your leader isn't really, genuinely caring about you. We get people who say, I don't have time for their personal issues, for example. And we say, well, if you don't have time for them now, then you're going to have to deal with, the outcomes later.
So I think that the human interaction remains fundamental. And what worries me sometimes is that the world is going in another direction. So I think as a company, we're swimming upstream because we represent what we know, what the data tells us, makes us feel well, what makes us work well, what makes us productive, what makes us motivated. And that is the ability to work with other people, communicate with other people, trust other people, create a sense of safety. And unfortunately, in some ways, the world is going in the other direction. So we see how technology, AI, is taking us away from human interactions, and we're interacting more with our devices. With now AI is taking over. So I think we have a really important mission.
Yeah.
I love this part of our job, to be honest, because sometimes we walk into a training room and people are like, why do we need this? Why do we need this particular topic? I don't know. Why do we need to know how to manage change, for example? Or why do we need to learn about psychological safety? And then, sort of, as you start to go into it, you see people lighting up and they realize, yes, this is relevant and this can help and this might be lacking, or we have this and this is strong. So and there they might want to reinforce that. So by the end of it, I think, and this is what we're bringing to the podcast as well, that we would like to bring these experiences into our podcast as well. So we bring them to life, and we bring these, different moments to life.
Absolutely. In fact, I think that the focus needs to be on what the people who hear us and watch us, what they're going to take from it.
Yeah.
Right? Because, I know we're very interesting people, but but maybe that's not enough. So we want this to be practical. Maybe we can talk a little bit about the type of guests that we intend on getting. Because really it's not about, being sensational, or it's not about how many views or likes we get, but how significant we are. So as you know, we strive for significance, not popularity, which is, again, another example of swimming upstream. So the type of guests that we want are guests who have, like everyone else, they have a story to share, probably more towards the world of work and organization. So I think, we'll have that bias, because that's who we are in terms of a company. But we really want them to share with us, and then with the audience, how they got to where they are, their challenges especially. Because again, we tend to see successful people as, we just see the success.
Yeah.
But we don't realize that was a series of failures, hardships, challenges. It's like climbing a mountain. Nobody knows how much you suffer until you get to the top. But then when you get to the top, everyone, claps. So I think this is going to be about that, people sharing their stories.
Like you've just mentioned, I think a big part of it is also highlighting on the setbacks, highlighting on how many times, you were trying to reach something, that you got hit by a setback. You're moving in one direction and all of a sudden something comes up and your direction has changed. But rather than stopping to move forward yourself, there is that growth mindset to move in that right direction, to keep going up.
Exactly.
I guess upstream in a way, like you said,
exactly.
To work your way up as well.
And we're hoping as well to hear personal stories, right? So it's, it's not just everything to do with work and nothing outside of it. We're actually moving on from this myth that, you enter the workplace and you leave your personal life behind. So hopefully, we'll get guests in who are, open and happy to share maybe what they were going through at any given time. So that you can see the interplay of, what's going on in general in your life impacting and having that impact. Yeah.
In fact, I guess that's one of the myths we want to debunk, that you leave work at work and home at home, because we know that there's no such thing. And the three of us are deep in psychology, so we know how this works, and our brains aren't like submarines. They
I
don't
think
have
we wish we
these
could.
they don't have these compartments, and if you're taking in water, you close a compartment and that's it. Unfortunately, they're more like an open plan.
We like to think. I think we like to think that we have more control over our brain than we do, and that's maybe where we
Yeah.
where we fall. Then, yeah.
If you actually look at the typical working day, that's usually the best hours of our day
Yeah.
being taken up by work, because in the morning you might be a bit too tired or still waking
Yeah.
up, and in the evening
Exactly.
you might then be exhausted and want to get to bed, or
That's it.
at least have some downtime and relax. So
Yeah.
during that chunk when you are at work,
In fact, I like one of the things I often say is, like work takes up the best hours of our day, the best days of our week, the best weeks of our month, the best months of our year, and the best years of our life. Imagine if it sucks.
Yeah.
Imagine if it's a place where, where you're not enjoying it, you're not feeling productive, you're not feeling like there's a purpose
Yeah.
into what you're doing. And we know that it affects mental health and well-being as well. So I think sharing these kind of insights hopefully will even be a source of inspiration for people. Maybe it will help people make a decision that they've been wanting to take and didn't have
Yeah.
the courage to take. Maybe it will help people appreciate more that what they do is really important, that it's really valuable. So we're not here to preach. It's more to share, share experiences. So for me, if we impart good knowledge that's based on good research and reliable data, because that's becoming something, it's becoming quite difficult to get to that. If we are a source of inspiration through our guests mostly, if we can inspire people, and if we can help people to grow, I think we would have, extended the PsyPotential mission into the podcast and then reaching out more to the, the field.
Exactly. What I love about the work we do is that it's not all doom and gloom. Like, you could think, okay, I'm unhappy, so I'm not in the right place, for example, or I'm not in the right role or company. But what we find is, if you look into that further and you figure out maybe what the real struggle is or what the issue is, the relationship, and maybe it's your purpose and you haven't really connected to it. People can feel drastically different all of a sudden, basically, and start feeling really happy. And you see that all the time. You see, people doing the exact same job, and one of them's happy and the other one isn't, right? And then you say, well, why is that? And then, so there are ways to sort of fix these kinds of things without necessarily leaving. And I think that's important to mention.
like you both hinted at it. I think Patrick just directly mentioned that a small tactic could be just to be grateful. So finding time within your day to be grateful for, what's going well, what you have, and that ties into having a purpose and meaning for what you're doing,
Absolutely.
rather than sort of sticking to the negative parts of work or negative parts of your day, which do stick to us a lot more than the positive. But taking time out to be grateful for those things can be a small technique used to help you feel more content and happy.
Definitely.
Yes.
And I mean, the happiest people aren't happy all the time either, right? So in any job, you're going to have days where, you're not so happy, or you're struggling, or you're not enjoying what you're doing, unfortunately. But it's a part of it. Makes the rest worth it.
I think this is specifically relevant. Like recently, and over here, the three of us are different ages. Unfortunately, I'm the eldest. There's nothing you can do about that. But we do say how the younger generation, especially what are termed the Gen Z cohort, right? We hear a lot of negativity about these workers, that they're entitled, they don't want to work, they're only concerned with themselves, etc., etc. And the worst one is that they don't have values.
Oh, yeah.
And we know from our experience that, first of all, they have values. They're different
they're
from
just different.
what the traditional values were. But I think we're finding this, because we often discuss this between us, that first of all, meaningful work is more important.
Yeah.
Right? They don't want to work without a purpose.
They'll take a pay cut, literally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So meaningful work. But I also think that they lack connection in their lives, and finding that connection in the workplace helps them to actually work better, you know?
Yeah.
And then there's the big topic of leadership. How do you lead
Yeah.
people who have different values, who have different culture, who give a lot of importance to life outside work, so it's not just all about work.
Yeah.
And how do you lead them? And the biggest headache for companies, retention. You know, how do you keep them working with you, and how do you engage them? So I hope at least we'll be answering some of these critical questions that people want to hear about, you know?
Also, maybe asking certain questions
Yes.
for our audience to have a think about themselves as well, and reflect
Yes,
upon there.
exactly.
So we wish to pose these questions that hopefully might leave people thinking beyond
Exactly.
the podcast as well.
And also, I mean, there's so much to say, but also I think because I'm often challenged by people, especially in the world of IT, engineering, and finance, where, you know, the people skills aren't so natural. And they tell me, yes, but this is wishy-washy and airy-fairy or hairy-fairy.
Well, yeah,
someone
before we
told
get
me.
pushed back on that, they like the data, right? They
Yes,
want to
yes,
see all
yes.
the data, and it can.
But the thing is, this is hard science. So we know, we tap into neuroscience, we tap into how the brain reacts to these things, we tap into
Yeah.
what stress does, what burnout does, and how it affects the way that people think and function and relate to other people, you know? So our aim is to show people that we're not talking just out of, you know, it's nice or it's good or it's soft. They're not soft skills, they're very hard skills,
Yep.
but they are people skills. And relating and listening and giving feedback and communicating effectively aren't easy.
And organizations who don't develop these skills, I mean, you know, they're on the way out basically. So, you know, it's either survive or die at this
Yes.
point with these kinds of skills.
Yep. And if connection is that important, especially with, I think, a lot of technological advances that are creating disconnect rather
Exactly.
than connect. Maybe being advertised as creating connections, but actually creating disconnections on a human level. And
Yes.
Yeah.
that's
Yes.
the way forward.
And at the end of the day, people want to be happy.
Yeah.
And what they pursue in their lives, whether it's healthy or unhealthy, whether it's the right way or not so much the right way, we pursue happiness. We want to feel happy. So ultimately, if we can spread the word, the ingredients that really tap into happiness, like you mentioned, the Harvard
yeah.
study. Now that's, you know, I mean, that's an 80-year-old study. There are thousands of
Yeah.
people who are
All
being
walks of
studied,
life.
all walks of life,
All ages, yeah.
blood
Families,
tests,
yeah.
X-rays, MRI scans,
Exactly.
interviews with them, interviews with the relatives, and every time the one thing that stands out is that the biggest predictor of health and happiness is connection,
Yeah.
good, meaningful connection with other people. Okay?
Yeah.
Now imagine a scenario where you go to work and you're afraid that you're going to be backstabbed, you're afraid that you're going to be bullied or harassed, you can't trust the people around you, okay? And that the leaders don't respect you, don't make you feel valued. So I know it sounds negative.
Can I add that they're profit driven as well? So it's just,
Yes, and
make us more money. That sort of a
And
culture.
We're actually seeing people, you know, from the newer generation, since we're talking about shifts, you know, becoming disenchanted literally
Yes.
by that. You know, they don't want to work for companies who are just trying to benefit the stakeholders. They want to work for companies who have a real purpose, you know, who are trying to be sustainable, environmentally sustainable, who want to help people basically overall. So,
And I think when people tell us that we're being idealistic, we should say, yes, we are.
I like that.
And we're proud of it.
I love that. So I thought we'd also, you know, chat about how it all started because, you know, we came up with the idea, but then we were just discussing it so deeply with our marketing team. And for me, they're much more than our marketing team. I mean, we work with them all the time. They helped us to create the whole concept, quite honestly. We're grateful for them, obviously, because otherwise this never would have kicked off. We would have just left it as an idea at the back of our minds. So, and you know Neil quite well as well.
It was a bit like a match made in heaven, as they say, because the more we spoke, the more we found that Nisja and PsyPotential are so aligned in our values. We put purpose before profit. We want to make a difference in people's lives. Nisja are great at telling stories and producing them in the most creative way and giving life to stories, because we talk. We just talk.
I remember. I remember our first meeting with them, and you wouldn't know what you're getting into.
Exactly.
You knew Neil, and I was going into the first meeting, and we just started talking like we're old friends,
Exactly.
meeting after a while. So that's the sort of relationship we have.
The chemistry helps, but this is a collaborative effort, and we hope it will go a long way to do some good, and as we always say, to be a force for good in this world. And that brings us to some of the guests that we have lined up in terms of we have quite a. Some have already
don't share them. It's a
No,
surprise.
I won't say that. But
Almost.
you know what was interesting is that when we did approach guests and asked them to come, they said yes. There was enthusiasm. It's like, yes, of course. We were actually thanked by some of them. They said, thank you. No, it would be really nice.
It's not how I respond to you when you suggested
No,
I'd be on it, but yeah. But that's nice. I'm happy for that.
But you're terrible. So
Thank you.
that's different. So I think we have guests coming from different areas. So some will talk about how challenging it can be to balance a key leadership position like being the CEO of a company and balance family life at the same time, and how they make it work. We have people who run small companies that are not that known, but who have a major international reach. And some work with very big companies and they're known and they're famous. So what I think we'll do is that we'll basically with each guest we'll see like what their story can offer and how that can be an inspiration.
And it's
for
not
the
limited
audience.
to position, right? I mean, it's just any
No,
kind of
in
a
fact,
story that they want to share.
In fact, I think we'll have people lined up who aren't necessarily
Like a CEO.
organizational leaders.
Yeah, exactly.
But they do have a leading role in society, in the work that they do.
Having said that, we will have organizational leaders as well.
Yes. Look, the bias is that. So we have a bias. So I think there are two biases: the psychological bias, because we're about psychology at work. That's why it's called PsyPotential. It's not because it's Psaila. So, oh God.
We should do a caveat there about our name, by the way, which you created, so I can blame you for
There
it.
were
But
actually
every
people.
time-
There were actually people who thought it was that.
Yeah, obviously.
They asked me, did you when you founded PsyPotential, did you call it that because your surname is Psaila, Psy? And I said, I am not that much of a narcissist and the big head to actually
No,
name
you're
the
not.
company after me.
You're not.
So
You're not, but we work with
Yeah.
you, and we still believe that.
The joke is, I always make that joke because people always ask me what. I tell them, yeah, we work at PsyPotential. They go, what? And I go, PSY Potential, but not for Psaila. So it just lives on. through us now.
my turn now, because we've spoken about guests, but and I seem to be the host for this podcast, so I'm going to be hosting. Like for so.
Yeah.
But you are also interesting, and you have something in common that people don't know. That in actual fact, you're Canadian and you're Australian, right? So, and you both came to Malta more or less at the same age. You
around the
came
same
back when
age.
you were 12, and you came back when you were 13. And you know what? Adaptability and adjustment is one of the big topics that we're going to talk about. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
Sure.
for me, I think also for Joe, for me it wasn't a coming back. For my parents,
Yeah.
it was a coming
Uh-huh.
back.
Yeah,
So
same for
of
me.
course.
for
Yes,
me, it
so-
was a coming.
Completely.
because I said returning.
Yes.
It wasn't returning. It was like literally uprooting.
Yeah,
and-
that's it.
So it was
That's
a
it.
change of house, change of country, change of friends, change of language.
Was it exciting
Yes,
for you?
he didn't
Was it
know-
a summer destination for you? Because that's how it was for me. So I was quite
He
excited.
didn't-
And then we landed and I was like, this is not summer anymore. Like now it's
He
real
didn't
life.
know Maltese. Was sent to a Maltese speaking school,
Yes.
and on the first day, someone told him, "Oh, over here we speak."
I only hear it.
Yes.
I'll omit the swear word.
Okay. No, use it.
Hello, over here.
That's like we only speak in Maltese.
Maltese.
I actually
Maltese.
jumped on the bus on my first day of school, so I found out which bus
Yeah.
goes
Not knowing the language.
to the town I was living in. And the assistant head came up and started shouting at me that I got on the bus early. I didn't understand a word, and then was given like a detention. And luckily my dad then intervened and told them that I don't understand the word in Maltese. It was a big transition, a big transition, which I think at first I rejected. I think my siblings were a bit different, but I rejected that in the beginning. I
Yeah.
had already started secondary school, high school, and
I think it's harder when you're older. Yeah,
Yep.
because that kind of an age. I mean, you join when people
That's,
have already made friends,
of course,
and you
it's
leave your friends behind. And
Yep.
so I think that's quite challenging, and adjusting to a new culture, which interestingly enough, then I think helped me later on. You know, when I, went to university and different workplaces.
In fact, we use that experience even to understand how people feel when they go from one company to the other and they have to start
Yeah.
all over, and it's a new culture, a new ways of doing things, new rules, new norms, new policies. So, and this is how we transfer our experiences into the world of work.
I think the funny side of it that we both share as well, which we've spoken about in quite some detail, especially when we found out that we kind of came to Malta at the same age, was the fact that you have to change so many things. I mean, you have to adjust even the way that you say things. Like when I
Accent.
like I used to say water. And I used to go to like the canteen of school and I used to say, "Can I have some water, please?" And they'd be like, "What?" I'd be like,
Water?
"Water?
What?
Water?" And they're like, "What?" I'm like, "Water." And they're like, "Oh, okay." And I'm like, you know what? it just kept happening, and then you had to adjust.
To go
so-
British, like water.
Yeah, and then it becomes part of your natural way of speaking. So.
yep.
And you were used to fighting kangaroos on the way to school.
For real, because he
And
did.
you played hockey.
You tried, did you?
Tried.
No, he did.
You never actually touched the kangaroo.
Yes, he did.
We did,
You did.
They punched kangaroos.
but ran, touched and ran.
And you played hockey.
Yeah.
Ice hockey.
Yeah. I got to play a little bit of hockey when I was studying in Manchester, at least, so that was nice. But I do miss that. We don't live in a country where you can have
backwards
ice.
too?
Yeah.
Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Because
But in Malta, when we get the ice ring in Christmas, it's
No,
a
but
bit
that's-
dangerous for me to do that. So people falling, not necessarily knowing how to skate. So
so even for you, it was a big
yeah.
transition.
Yeah.
Like here.
Right. It took me a long time to adjust. I don't know about you, but it took me like quite a few years. And I was excited to come, but then I was in quite denial. And I wished to go back afterwards, sort of when I realized, the reality set in and I kind of went, okay. Yeah.
I think there was a long number of years when I used to say I'll turn 18 and go back.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Interesting. That's interesting.
Now I'm 42 and I'm still here. So
Yeah, I mean, once you make roots, I think, again, I mean, for me, I had all my family here, almost all of them anyway. I have some family in New York as well, but they weren't that close where we were living in
Of
Canada.
course, because you were actually born in America.
Yeah, in the US, exactly, in Pittsburgh. And then
Pittsburgh,
we moved
and then-
exactly to Canada, Ontario, and
And
to
then-
Oakville, and then here. So yeah.
maybe linking to what we were saying earlier, I think a part of staying here was connections made.
it
you know?
was for me as well.
So luckily, and that helped. That helped with the transition there because new connections were made, new
Yeah.
friends were made. I guess learning the language, learning the culture was part of
So
it.
that's interesting because what we often take for granted is the permanence of
Yeah.
relationships here because we don't move around that much. So it's something that probably helps because we know that, within 20 minutes we're visiting friends or family.
That's lovely.
Rather than a 5-hour drive
Yeah.
to see your parents, for example.
Exactly. My parents used to joke that sort of because we moved here, we stayed closer. Whereas, like in Canada, typically kids tend to move out when they're like 16, 17, and they move very far, across the country. So they got me closer, unless I chose to leave completely. But
But then it's also what you decide to focus on. Because I remember at times feeling suffocated because Malta is so small, and I was used to driving super long distances. But then once again, it's sort of benefit finding. It's being grateful for the things you have rather than the things you don't.
Yeah.
And I think a big part of it was also bringing parts of the culture from Australia to
Yes.
here and living those moments as well. So it's a celebration of
It's interesting
cultures.
because at the moment we're doing quite a lot of coaching and training in the field of change and transitions, mostly because of the way that change is accelerating and the rapid pace that change is happening. And there is an element of loss, whether we like it or not. Even if it's a positive change, there is an element of loss. And you really had to go through that. And I remember a quote by Lucy Hone, the resilience researcher, and she says, "Don't lose what you have to what you have lost." It's like appreciate what you have and don't take the things for granted, because even when you do lose something, but there are things to be gained as well. So I think it's a powerful message.
It's very true.
I must admit there were times where it was hard to see that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Probably for you too. So there, I guess there was an element of stuckness that I would say lasted for a couple of years before I could see that vision and take that mindset on. And I can understand how people at work in their own personal lives have these sorts of setbacks and get stuck there. So
Yes.
something we'd love to go into in these podcasts, and we do have guests lined up to do so, is how you can train resilience and
Yes.
how it's not something that you're born with, something that you either have or don't,
But you can develop it.
but something that you can develop, train, and build up towards, that can help you bounce back from setbacks.
In fact, I was actually this morning I was watching a video from the London Business Forum, and they were looking at the critical skills that we're going to need in the coming years. And I was pleasantly surprised because, first of all, the human connection and human interaction was still considered important.
Okay.
They mentioned a lot about empathy and creativity, because what they said is that so far, even though AI has made huge advancements and will make huge advancements, and in many jobs it's going to replace us. So, but they were saying how sort of that human interaction and that that sacred space that's created when two people relate to each other is going to remain important. So they spoke about communication, the ability to articulate your thoughts, the ability to empathize. And then they mentioned a lot about adaptability, how critical it's going to be that we adapt fast, that we develop mental flexibility, which then ties into resilience. So, one thing that we've had to accept even in our own training when we go out there and talk to people is that, stress is here to stay, pressure is always going to be there, but we can build the resilience to be able to take that and not let it break us down. And even when it does, we can bounce back up. So I think that's an important message that, I'm sure that some of our guests are going to talk about, maybe the darkest moments of their lives, if they're ready to do that and to be so personal. But I'm sure we've all had those, and that's what makes us human.
In fact, that's what I'm excited about most about the guests, that they bring forward their stories. Because what we know is that when you hear someone else, speaking about something that maybe you're going through, you've gone through, you can really relate to them and you can connect to it. And it can heal as well.
I think we're living in a bit of a fake world where we think that, nice photos we see on Instagram and reels of people smiling and happy, and they're always on holiday, and
Yeah.
and
The highlights.
I know I have seen, you know, photos of people that seem to be the happiest people on earth, and I knew that they were going through a very, very bad crisis in their personal life. And but when people see that,
Yeah.
you know, and there is research that
Yeah.
shows that the more time we spend on social media, the more miserable we become, because we start comparing our lives to lives that are being projected
Instead of
you know?
living them.
You know, no one puts on Facebook, I just failed my exam and I don't know how I'm going to deal
Yeah.
with it. No one puts on Facebook, I've just been made redundant and it's the hardest
Well, some do.
time. You
but
know,
it's
some
just,
do, but,
a particular.
you know, but then I think what we want is to be real, even with our guests, to be authentic, so that people can relate. See,
Yeah.
people can identify with what they're saying. You know, they can say, "Wow, okay, this is real. This is not, you know, sugarcoating
Yeah.
and projecting a fake view of themselves." Even to me, what's really important is when we talk about leadership, and I'd like your opinions about this actually. This whole idea of vulnerability, you know, because you know that even the way I manage the company, I tend to try to be
Yeah.
as open and show my vulnerability, because I don't think it's a weakness. I
No,
think it's
we're very lucky.
you know, I guess even your own experiences of how safe you are to be vulnerable, and
I
putting you on the spot.
I can go if you like. I mean, I feel very lucky, obviously, that you know, you share when you're struggling, or you share when you're stressed, because I know people who work with companies where their leaders don't do that, and what we notice is that, you know, the teams just don't want to show when they make a mistake, then because they say, you know, if I bring it up, then I'm going to look vulnerable. My leader isn't vulnerable. I need to be strong like the leader, and then we go into this kind of chain, and we see that as being particularly dangerous in certain companies and industries where mistakes are huge
Yes.
problems, right?
Yes,
Like
yes, yes.
aviation and these kinds of things. Yeah.
This week, someone in our team made a mistake. He actually told me, "Aren't you going to be mad at me?"
Yes.
Yes. And I said, and what use is that? You know, like, how is that going to help you if I'm mad at you? I said, I'm not happy, and I do feel a bit mad at you, but you know, but my focus is how can we make sure that this doesn't happen again. Even if it does, it's not the end of the world. But like,
Yeah.
how did it happen? It wasn't a huge mistake, but it basically was an oversight that two gatekeepers actually missed even
Yeah.
after
Yeah, it happens.
after the mistake was done. So we said, okay, let's look at the process and how that could have been avoided, even if you repeated that mistake. Because let's face it, you know, we make mistakes.
And usually, once you look into the mistake, you actually end up improving the
Exactly.
process in itself and going deeper into it and finding,
And,
new ideas emerge.
I think we're in a privileged position that because of the topics that we talk about in different
Yeah.
True,
workplaces, people come up to us and talk about their vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
But there you
you
realize
get to see that.
how very much alive it looks. So
Yeah.
you would think, I don't know, people who have amazing wages and great bonuses and a lot of material goods, they can't be vulnerable because they have everything in a way, in a material sense. But then you talk to them and you realize that there are vulnerabilities there. And I think a big part of what we want to do in this podcast is to bring those stories to life.
Yes.
And show that, the side of businesses
Yes.
exist as well and need to be taken care of. And as we've quoted in different researches, if you do take care of them, then there are a lot of facts and data
And benefits.
Yeah, you reap the rewards
move in
then,
that
exactly.
direction.
Yeah, so I guess we're really looking forward to this. This is a dream for us, and it's nice that we're doing it together with Nisja, and it's something creative. It's something to help us, as we said, reach more people,
Yeah.
influence more people, and not to be afraid to be optimists, and not
Yeah.
to be afraid to be idealists. I am going to turn to our audience here and really invite you to follow us. We're going to be on all the regular socials, but also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. If you find us on YouTube, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's a babies, which we want to grow. And I am going to say something that I was told not to say, but we promise you that you'll be in good company. No. Sorry. Yeah, you will be in good company.